Hello, in this video I'll be discussing about sexual reproduction in plants. We are going to mainly discuss about flower as a reproductive organ of flowering plants. This topic is part of chapter number 8, How do organisms reproduce? Now let's begin by discussing about sexuality in plants. Sexuality here refers to sexes in plants or genders in plant. If I make it little simple for you. So sexes in plant can be either bisexual plant. So bisexual plant here refers to plant having both the sex organ, male and female sex organ are present within one plant. It is also sometimes known as monoecious. Mono refers to one or single. Ecious refers to sexes. So if sex is present, both the sexes are present within one plant, then that is called as monoecious. Homothallic is used for simple plant. The term homo refers to same, thallic here refers to thallus, related to thallus. Thallus is group of cells or tissue having similar cells. So which is usually used for simple plants. Earlier algae was categorized under plants. So for algae we are using term homothallic, which indirectly refers to bisexual, a plant having both the sex organ or a plant which is bearing both the sex organ. Say for example in case of coconut, cucurbits, castor and maize. In coconut we have a plant of coconut which is having both the male flower and female flower, which will be producing male gamete and female gamete respectively, and in a way there is easier for propagation or reproduction of bisexual plants, as we'll discuss furthermore. So in some plants sexes are usually different. That means unisexual plant. So plant having separate sex. If we have a female plant, then we have a male plant. Female plant will be bearing female flower, and on the other hand male flower are present on or growing on male plant. Unisexual is also known as heterothallic. Hetero refers to different, so different male and female thallus are present in some algae. Di refers to two, ecious refers to sexes. So if two sexes are present separately on two different plants, that is dioecious. So for example we have papaya plant, date palm, sweet potato, marchantia. So in case of papaya plant we have male papaya plant and female papaya plant. Now in male papaya plant there is growth of male flower, and in case of female papaya plant they are having female flower which are producing their own gametes, and later on involvement of both of the plant there is reproduction. Now let's discuss about the stamen, which is the male reproductive organ in flower. Usually a typical stamen looks like this, bearing a bilobed anther. Bi refers to two, lobed here refers to having two parts in anther. Anther is having two parts, and which is attached to a long and slender stalk. Slender here refers to thin. The stalk which is long and thin, attaching bilobed anther to the thalamus or to the platform where the flowers are growing, is known as filament. So the term filament itself says that the stalk is thin. Usually filament refers to hair-like structure. So the base part is the proximal end of the filament. Proximal here refers to the site or area of growth of the entire stamen. Usually the growth of stamen starts from proximal end of the filament or proximal end of the entire stamen. So usually this base or proximal end of the filament is attached either to the platform where the flowers are growing, that is called as thalamus, or it may be attached to the colorful petals. This is another representation where it is showing the transverse section of typical anther of stamen. So transverse section here refers to horizontal section. If we cut the anther in horizontal manner, then we are able to find this kind of structure in anther. So anther is having two lobes, right? So one lobe here and the other lobe here. And in each lobe there are two sac-like structure, and in total we are having four sac-like structure, and these sac-like structure are called as microsporangium, which you need not to remember in class 10. So in microsporangium there is production of pollen grains. Microsporangium can be also called as pollen sacs on maturation of the anther. So pollen grains are usually present within the pollen sacs, or if the anther is immature, then pollen grains are called as microspores, and microspores are present within the immature pollen sac called as microsporangium. So we'll proceed further and let's discuss about female reproductive part or parts of typical pistil. Pistil is also known as carpel. So the diagram shown here is a representation of pistil or carpel. Now in case of pistil we are having stigma, which is the landing platform for the pollen grains. Pollen grains will be received on stigma. Later on, pollen germination starts, and stigma is attached to the ovary with an elongated thin stalk, which is known as style. So style is adjoining stigma to the ovary, and the ovary is the basal bulged part of the pistil. So pistil is usually having ovary. The main structure of pistil is ovary, and ovary is a bulged proximal end or basal part of pistil. Now inside the ovary we have ovarian cavity, a hollow room like structure or a hollow chamber which is known as ovarian cavity. It is technically called as locule, and locule is enclosing the placenta to which we have ovules are attached. Ovule is also known as megasporangium. Now within the ovule we have the female gamete, and all these structure, stigma, style, ovary, represent pistil or carpel, and pistil is usually attached to the platform where the entire flowers, parts of the flowers are growing. That is called as thalamus or receptacle. This is another diagrammatic representation of pistil showing stigma, style and ovary, and the pistil is attached to the thalamus. Now we were discussing that megasporangium or ovule is present attached to the placenta, and if I magnify it, then ovule is having a structure like this in some plants. Not all the ovules are same, so this is an upside down diagrammatic representation of ovule, and inside the ovule we have embryo sac. So within the embryo sac we have egg cells. Now egg cells are present within the ovule, and ovule is present within the ovary. So ovule or megasporangium is protecting or is having egg. Along with that there is central cell. So inside the embryo sac we have total of 7 cells, And among these 7 cells, you are required to remember central cell, which is having 2 nuclei. Central cell of the embryo sac is having 2 nuclei. That means 2 nucleus is present within the cell of central cell. And we have X cell, which is also present within the embryo sac. Hope you have understood the detailed structure of pistil. Regarding detailed structural description, you'll be learning in higher classes. Now, to summarize the male and female reproductive part, and to make ourselves clear about the structure of flower, you are able to see here a diagrammatic representation of longitudinal section of flower. LS here refers to longitudinal section. Longitudinal section here refers to cut, a vertical section. So if the flower is cut vertically, then we are able to see a diagram, see a structure like this. So this is a diagrammatic representation. If you observe in nature, then you may become familiar to these structures. So we have male reproductive part, which is called as stamen, and stamen is having anther and a thin slender filament. We have carpel as female reproductive part, which is having stigma and the thin slender stalk called as style, and we have a bulging base, which is ovary, and within the ovary we have ovule. Now all these part along with the petals are the colorful leaf-like structures. So petals are in different color in different flowers. So petals are usually colorful leaf-like structure, and all these structures are usually protected by a green leafy structure called a sepal. Now sepal is protecting all these parts starting from the flower bud before opening or blossoming of the flower, and all these structures are growing on thalamus or on receptacle. Hope you have understood. If you haven't understood, then you have to go again, rewind, and try to play this video again. You'll be able to understand. Now, what are the different agents which are helping in pollination? So we'll look for different types of pollinators. So pollinators or agents of pollination can be biotic agents, which are usually abiotic agent. Abiotic agents are usually used by few plants. We also have biotic agents, which are mostly animals, and majority of the plant uses biotic agents of pollination. So in case of abiotic agents, abiotic here refers to non-living. So biotic refers to living. So abiotic agents can be wind. A pollination which is carried out by wind is known technically as anemophily, which is more common compared to water pollination. Water pollination is technically called hydrophily, and which is very less common. Now, biotic agents or living organisms or animals which are helping in pollination can be insects. Pollination done by insects is technically called entomophily, and pollination carried out by birds is technically called ornithophily. Pollination achieved by bats is called as chiroptophily, and pollination carried by snails is known as melacophily, and pollination which is done collectively by different animals is can be called as zoophily. So zoophily is a collective term for pollination done by different animals. Though I have stated all these different terms, you have to remember that pollination is done either by non-living agents or abiotic agents, or it is usually achieved by uh, biotic agents. That means animals are involved in pollination. So animals which are helping in pollination can be insects, birds, bats, snails, or many other large animals. So you need not learn all the technical terms. So agents of pollination can be biotic, abiotic. In case of abiotic agents or non-living agents, we have wind and water. In case of biotic agents of pollination, we have insects, birds, bats, snails, and other animals, which include lemurs, arboreal rodents. Arboreal here refers to rodent here refers to rat family, animals which are included in rat family. So a rat, some rats which are dwelling or which are surviving on tree are called as arboreal rodent. We have gecko lizard and garden lizards. So you have to just remember that you should have idea regarding pollinators. No need to learn the entire technical term, but you can keep in your mind if you are interested. So how sexual reproduction occurs in plant? First, it's important for production of male gamete and female gamete. So sporogenesis is the first step which is occurring in flowering plants. Sporogenesis here refers to production of spores. The term sporogenesis is having main word, which is sporo, which refers to spores, or indirectly it refers to gametes. And genesis here refers to a process. Any term ending with sis is a process, and genesis here refers to production or generation, creation. So sporogenesis is production of male and female gametes, which can be either microsporogenesis or megasporogenesis. Microsporogenesis is process of production of male gametes or pollen grains, which are usually enclosing male gamete, and megasporogenesis is referring to production of megaspores, which indirectly is female gametophyte or female gamete enclosing a structure. Usually megaspores are embryo sac and which are possessing your female gamete. Now, after production of male and female gamete, then pollination occurs. Though we had discussed about the different pollinators, we haven't made ourselves clear about the pollination. What exactly is pollination? As I've written here, pollination is process of transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of pistil. Now, it's a bit difficult for you to understand, right? To make it clear, we have learned that stamen is the male reproductive organ and pistil or carpel is the female reproductive organ in flower. Now, during pollination, there is release of pollen grain by anther. As the pollen grain is released by anther, then it has to be transferred onto the stigma. So pollination is process of transfer of pollen grain released by anther onto the stigma. Is it clear? So as you can see here, it is a process. Pollination is a process, and in this process, transfer of pollen grain occurs. Transfer or movement of pollen grain occurs from anther to stigma of pistil, and both anther and stigma are usually part of male and female reproductive organ respectively, and stamen and pistil are growing inside flower, and pollination usually occur only between two plants of same species. So a rose plant can pollinate another rose flower. There is no achievement of pollination of pollen grains released by rose flower onto a marigold flower. So pollination is process of transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma, so that there is occurrence of fertilization. And fertilization in case of flowering plant is double fertilization, that is occurrence of two fertilization. So double fertilization is a phenomenon or mechanism or process of occurrence of two types of fertilization or fusion, that is syngamy and triple fusion. Triple fusion occurs in embryo sac. As you can see here, within the ovule we have central cell and egg cell. So they are production of two male gametes inside pollen grain once the pollen germinate. So there is production of two male gametes within the pollen tube by pollen grain. So inside pollen grain we are having two egg cells, two gametes. Now inside the ovule we are having egg cell and central cell. Central cell is having two nuclei, right? So one of the male gamete will be fusing with egg cell. One of the male gamete among the two gamete which are present within the pollen tube of pollen grain will fuse with egg cell and form zygote, which is technically called syngamy or fertilization. On the other hand, the other fertilization is triple fusion. In triple fusion, there is formation of PEN, primary endosperm nucleus, or later it will develop into primary endosperm cells, which will be developing into endosperm. So central cell having two nuclei will be fusing with another male gamete which is released within the pollen tube once the pollen starts germinating. So in a way there is formation of PEN. PEN is having three nuclei. So that's why term triple fusion is given. So double fertilization is a phenomenon in which there is occurrence of two fertilization. One is fertilization of one gamete, male gamete with egg cell, and on the other hand we have fertilization of another male gamete which is present within the pollen tube with the central cell of having two nuclei. After double fertilization, the zygote which is formed will be developing into embryo, and around the embryo we have endosperm which is formed from PEN. PEN will be primary endosperm nucleus will be undergoing cell division and form primary endosperm cells, which will be later forming the tissue of endosperm. Endosperm is food for the developing embryo. So embryogenesis here refers to formation of embryo, and for forming embryo, endosperm is necessary, and in a way there is formation of seed. So seeds are developed from ovule. So entire ovule will be developing into seed, and the ovary will be developing into fruit. So I've explained the entire process of sexual reproduction in flowering plants in step-by-step manner. So try to understand these steps by following the video once again, playing the video once again. Now, to make all these steps easier for you, I've tried to show you some animation with my own computer diagrams. So let's see the overview of sexual reproduction in flowering plant. Now suppose this is a flowering plant bearing a flower. I've intentionally drawn this flower in larger size so that we can focus ourselves only on flower. So this is a plant bearing flower, and the flower here is bisexual, having both the stamen and pistil together in one flower. Now let's see. We know that pistil or carpel is female reproductive part of flower, and stamen is male reproductive part. And in stamen we have bilobed anther, which will be producing pollen grains, and pollen grains have to be transferred onto the stigma of pistil in order to occur pollination. So pollination occurs, so pollination is process of transfer of pollen grains which are released by anther onto the stigma. Now what happens in order to understand the detailed steps which are occurring after pollination? Let's focus ourselves in a larger pistil or carpel. Now, we said that after pollination there is landing or receiving of landing of pollen grains on stigma, or receiving of pollen grains by stigma of carpel or pistil. Now what happens? The most compatible or most suitable or most fertile pollen grain, the most compatible pollen grain will be germinating, will be forming tube-like structure, and that tube-like structure is called as pollen tube. Now pollen germination occurs and pollen tube started forming, which finally enters inside the ovule. We said that inside ovary we have ovule. Ovule is also known as megasporangium. Now within the ovule we have embryo sac. We have already seen the diagrammatic representation. Embryo sac is having two nuclei at the central inside central cell, and there are around 7 cells with 8 nuclei in embryo sac, and we have egg cell within our uh, embryo sac. Now for fertilization, for double fertilization to occur, pollen grains will be releasing 2 male gametes within the pollen tube, and after releasing 2 male gametes, one of the male gamete will be fusing with the 2 nuclei of central cell, and the other male gamete will be fusing with egg cell of the embryo sac, and in a way there is development of embryo. Embryogenesis occur. Embryogenesis is formation of embryo. Embryo is usually formed from the fertilized egg. Egg will be fusing with a male gamete of pollen grain, and zygote is formed. Zygote, on continuous cell division there is formation of embryo, and around the embryo the central cell, which will be fusing with the another male gamete, forms endosperm, and endosperm will be supporting embryo, and in a way embryo development start. Now within the embryo we have zygote, which is usually surrounded by endosperm, and as the embryo development starts or embryogenesis occurs, finally there is production of seeds. So ovule will be developing into seed inside ovary, and the ovary will be forming fruit. So ovary will form fruit and ovule will form seed. And what about the other parts of the flower? Say like style, stigma, petals, sepal, and other parts. What will happen? Other parts will degenerate, will gradually disappear, and finally there is formation of fruit. And in some plants there is formation of fruit which is enclosing seed inside it. So seed within the fruit. And the final step of sexual reproduction is formation of seeds. And seeds on germination, there is growth of new plant, right? So let's look at germination of seeds. You have seen gram seeds, right? Which we usually consume as a protein source. Now, gram seeds, if we keep it inside, if we soak it inside water for say like say for an hour night, say for 2 days, or say for one night, then there is the seed will be trying to germinate. The seed will uh, absorb water which is present around it, and in a way there is imbibition or absorbing of water by the seeds occur. And later on, if you take it take the seeds away from out of water and keep it in a cloth, then cloth or maybe inside a tissue paper, or if you keep it inside soil, then germination of gram seeds occur. Once there is germination of gram seeds, and if you cut open the seed, if you cut the seed, then you are able to see structure like this. So inside gram seeds on germination, you are able to find two part if you open the seed, and within the part you are able to see structure similar to this. This is a diagrammatic representation. You may have eaten ground nuts, and in ground nuts this kind of structure is very clear, right? We can clearly observe. So these two part part of cut open gram seed is called as cotyledon. So being gram seeds a dicotyledon, it is having two cotyledons. Cotyledons are food for the developing embryo. So food source for the seed is cotyledon, and usually cotyledons are indirectly the endosperm. So endosperms will be developing into cotyledon. So cotyledon will be food for the germinating embryo, and we have a tiny portion which is at the upper part, which is called as plumule, and plumule is the future shoot, future aerial part of the plant. So plumule will be developing into stem, branches and leaves and other parts which are above the ground. And on the other hand, on opposite of it, we are having radicle. Radicle is the future root. Radicle will be forming root system. So if I take it out, if we separate, or later after proper germination, there is production of tiny structure like this. So in it we can clearly see that there is production of leafy structure from the upper part of the embryo, and that is plumule, the future shoot or future aerial part, future part of the plant which is growing above the soil. And on the opposite or on bottom part of the embryo is radicle, a tiny growth of root-like structure occurs, which will be undergoing development and growth to form root system. So in a way, we have studied about germination of seeds. Now, do seeds germinate just after the production of seeds? No, right? We usually find different seeds in the ration store or food stores. So in grocery, we are able to find different seeds, right? And they are not germinated. So seeds can undergo seed dormancy. Dormancy of seed here refers to a resting phase of seed. Resting here refers to inactive period or inactive time duration of seed, and during that period seeds will be trying to stop it from germination. The seeds will be trying to stop undergoing germination. So innate here refers to the seeds themselves. It is a genetic characteristic. It is a mechanism which is present within the seed. So seed dormancy is a resting phase during which there is inhibition or stopping of germination of seeds, which is even if the seed is in a favorable condition to germinate, they may not be germinating, mainly for its survival, in order to become viable, in order to become more fertile, seed may not be germinating. So what is the main purpose or main objective of seed dormancy? Mainly it is important for storage of seed. For us, in order to consume later, we can store it. And even for the plants, it's important for continuation of species. So at more favorable condition, whenever there is achievement of more favorable condition, then there is germination of seeds. So with this we have studied about, and well, yes, it's important to tell you one important point: seeds on germination, then there is growth of new plant, right? So hope you have understood the entire topic about sexual reproduction in flowering plants. And in this slide I've summarized entire steps which are involved in sexual reproduction in flowering plants. You can pause this slide and you can write down notes, or I'll be also handing out the notes regarding this. So it's important for you to answer a few questions, right? So you'll be drawing diagram of different parts. Say the first question asks you to draw a well-labeled diagram of stamen. Second question is for you to draw a well-labeled diagram of pistil, and the third question is for you to enlist various agents of pollination, and fourth question asks you to give reason. I should put question mark here, I sorry for this. So how does sexual reproduction occurs in flowering plants? And fifth question asks you to explain pollination in flowering plants, and the sixth question demand you to draw a well-labeled diagram of cut open germinated seed of gram showing cotyledons, radicle and plumule. And the seventh question is for you to describe seed dormancy. So I'll modify the question here. See, it should be question mark, right? So this is all for this video. I'll see you in another video. Till then, take care of yourself and be happy. Keep smiling. Bye.